In light of recent events in Venezuela, it is important to briefly explain what has happened over the past years. What occurred on January 3rd was not isolated. It was the result of years of democratic dismantling, erosion, repression, and a regime that chose to remain in power, force, and violence after closing every peaceful and constitutional path for change. Let us remember that all of this unfolded and was decided by the Maduro regime when they chose not to recognize the victory of Edmundo González Urrutia in the presidential election from July 28th of 2024. So now, we're gonna give you 6 facts that shows you what has happened in Venezuela over the last decades. Number 1, democracy dismantled. Since at least 2013, and especially after 2017, elections in Venezuela have lacked basic democratic conditions. Independent observation was blocked, candidates were arbitrarily disqualified, public resources were abused, and the electoral authority lost all independence. The institutional rupture became definite when the Supreme Court, controlled by the executive, nullified the National Assembly elected in 2015, eliminating the separation of powers. Number 2, repression as state policy. With democratic channels closed, Venezuelans protested peacefully in 2014, 2017, 2019, and again after the 2024 presidential election. What was the response? In 2014, 43 people were killed. In 2017, thousands were injured and detained, while 125 were killed. Mostly of them students. In 2019, dozens were killed. And after the presidential election of 2024, over 2,000 people were arbitrarily detained with documented torture and disappearances. These were not isolated excesses. They were systematic. Number 3, dialogue used to delay. Over more than a decade, the regime engaged in repeated negotiation processes with international mediators. UNASUR and the Vatican in 2014. The Vatican again mediated a dialogue in 2016. Talks in the Dominican Republic between 2017 and 2018, the Oslo process led by Norway in 2019, negotiations in Mexico between 2021 and 2023, and the Barbados Agreement in 2024. In every case, commitments were announced, including political prisoners being released, electoral guarantees, and respect for democratic institutions, only to be systematically violated. Dialogue was used not to resolve the crisis, but to buy time, divide the opposition, ease international pressure, and continue repression in parallel. The regime always failed to uphold the agreements or left the negotiations after they have stalled for long enough. Number 4, economic and humanitarian collapse. Venezuela is suffering one of the worst peacetime collapses in modern history. We have a man-made, complex humanitarian emergency that has no precedent in the region. GDP fell by over 75%. Hyperinflation exceeded 1 million %. Over 90% of the households fell into poverty. 7.9 billion people were forced to flee. As of today, more than 20 million Venezuelans are in need of humanitarian assistance. Number 5, political persecution. Since 2014, over 15,800 people have been arbitrarily detained for political reasons. As of today, January 8th of 2026, there's still more than 1,000 political prisoners in Venezuela. These abuses have been documented by international human rights bodies, by the United Nations Fact-Finding Mission, and there is an investigation by International Criminal Court to analyze possible crimes against humanity committed in Venezuela. This investigation opened in 2021. Number 6, the 2024 election. Unfair conditions, but no confusion about the result. The July 28, 2024 election was held under severely unfair conditions. Maria Corina Machado, the opposition primary winner, was arbitrarily banned from running. Opposition parties faced censorship, intimidation, and institutional obstacles. Despite this, Venezuelans went and voted, and they voted massively. The result was clear and overwhelming. Edmundo González Urrutia won with around 70% of the votes, by a margin of over 4 million votes. And how can we say this? Because this was able to be proven because the opposition managed to collect 85% of the vote tallies. There was no ambiguity about the result. The regime simply refused to recognize it. So in conclusion, people may agree or disagree with President Trump's approach, the removal of the dictator Nicolás Maduro. That debate is legitimate, but January 3rd was not the cause, it was the consequence. It was the result of years of ignored warnings, stolen elections, broken negotiations, mass repression, economic collapse, humanitarian catastrophe, and the systematic violations of human rights and the denial of the Venezuelan people right to choose. With every peaceful path destroyed, consequences follow. This is not ideology, it is reality. The transition has started.